Hi, I'm Dave Irvine, Executive Director at the Highlands Center for Natural History. And you all know by now that we're celebrating our 25th anniversary of the incorporation of the Highlands Center. And of course, our history goes back much further than that to the old Community Nature Center site in the early 1970s. But this year, this is what we're celebrating is the Highlands Center for Natural History, of doing those wonderful programs for all those wonderful years, exposing the audience to the wonders of the natural world. And joining me today is Joan Dukes. And Joan was one of our founders and has been involved in this organization from its very beginnings. And we're sitting here in the children's play area on climbing rock sculpture, which Joan has had a lot to do with this whole area here at the center and one of her many projects that she has done for us. And so tell us a little bit about climbing rock sculpture in this wonderful area that we're sitting in.
Well, Dave, you remember that the Discovery Gardens was set to open the very end of May 2017. Mm-hmm. And in January of that year, not a single thing had been done here for the children, and called Forest Play. And I was starting to get nervous. And at that point, Toby York, our wonderful committee chair of the Discovery Gardens, put me in touch with the developer of the preserve, who very generously donated 2 big truckloads of gorgeous granite boulders delivered on Valentine's Day. Can't get much better than that. So I was thrilled until I started looking for a backhoe driver. I already had a wonderful artist, Roger Ase, a very talented local artist, and he was eager to get going. And I couldn't find a backhoe driver. I made 8 calls, and I was striking out, and I was really getting nervous because by then, I think it was March. So I called Toby York, and said, Toby, what are we going to do? And I tried not to sound too panicked, but I really was. And he said, well, Joan, if you rent a backhoe, I'll drive it. And I was shocked and ecstatic because that was not what I was expecting. And I didn't ask Toby how long it had been since he last had driven a backhoe. That secret is forever a secret. So anyway, things started looking up. I called a company in town that rents backhoes the next day with heavy-duty straps. That was really critical. I called Roger, the artist, and he was available for Monday and Tuesday. Bob Studi, who was on staff and was going to be our helper and muscle man, he was available. He had just gotten back from a trip. And Toby, bless his heart, didn't have to leave for his chemo treatments until Wednesday. And the weather forecast was going to be for sun, just like it is today, and not too cold and not windy. It was absolutely perfect. I was so jazzed until I started thinking about our team that weekend. Toby, as I mentioned, and you remember well, was suffering from a very rare form of cancer. And he, 3 years prior, had been given a 15% chance of surviving for 2 years. And Roger, our artist, was 75 years old and had had back surgery the previous year. Bob Studi was 70. He also had had back surgery. I was 73 and can't hear a darn thing when there are machine noises going on. And Donna Pacheco, who was the wonderful, amazing project manager, volunteer for this whole Discovery Gardens, had gone in for a stent, and as you remember, had open heart surgery, triple bypass. So that was our team. I guess you probably could have called us the hale and hearty handicappies or the colorful convalescent crew. How's that?
That sounds great.
You like that?
Yeah, yeah. Very
So
descriptive.
anyway, that weekend I started thinking about safety. And I really got nervous because none of us had ever worked together before. And this was a huge project. And I didn't want any machismo to cause any injuries. So I called Toby and I reminded him that Roger was 75 years old and had back surgery the previous year. And then I called Roger, and I reminded him that Toby had cancer and he was undergoing these really harsh chemo treatments. And please, would they call it quits, call it a day before they were tired. And they both agreed. And so then at 8 o'clock, Monday morning,
We all showed up.
everything started to happen. And they donned their hard hats and their cold fingers were in the gloves and the machinery started and this is what began to happen. And the intention was to build a sculpture that would be aesthetically pleasing, fun for the kids to climb, and stable forever. No earthquakes are going to move this sculpture.
Pretty strong.
Yeah, it's held up so well, pretty well so far. So, so they used the backhoe bucket. They used a front end loader, heavy duty straps for moving these boulders when they were placing them, crowbars, and amazing amount of every muscle in their body to hand shovel, dirt, rocks. You were there. You remember.
Yeah, I did.
I mean, it was an incredible thing to watch those guys.
Get them stable. Get the rocks stable.
And Roger had nothing on paper, no design on paper. It's like, how is he going to know where he's going to put these? I mean, do you remember having that feeling?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And he just let the rocks themselves decide
Speak the hill.
where they needed to be for their final resting place. It was phenomenal to watch. And one by one, hour by hour, the rocks started to become part of what I thought was a stunning sculpture. And at the same time, the men started to become this cohesive, mutually supportive team. I mean, that's the part that really touched me, because Toby was driving this backhoe that had a front end loader, and that was a lethal bucket. And sometimes it was just inches away from Roger's head and Bob's head. And it's like, he just finessed it so beautifully. So while Toby's like a top-notch surgeon, manipulating the bucket with the rocks that are dangling with the straps around them, dangling overhead, then Bob and Ken Bigelin, another staffer who had come on to the job, they were down below manipulating these huge boulders. A lot of them were over 6 feet. I don't know how much they weighed. Do you have any
I have no idea.
A lot.
A lot.
And so they're manipulating these boulders into place. And then after they're in place, they're shoveling dirt and little stones and everything into the open spaces to bring it all together and be stable. I mean, huge, huge work. And nobody got hurt. There was not one single injury, probably a lot of sore muscles, but no injuries the whole time. And so I was really thrilled about that. One of my favorite moments of that 2 days period was the end of the first day. Toby's wife, Cam, brought their son, Wilson, who was only 5 years old at the time, into the parking lot. And Toby saw them. He beeped the horn in the backhoe and jumped out of the cab and ran down, gave a hug to Wilson, brought him into the project. And Wilson was the first one to climbing rock sculpture. It was really a sweet, touching moment for all of us. So I guess when I look back at it, after hanging out with Toby and Roger and Bob and Ken, I was just bursting with joy, with inspiration, with gratitude, and with relief. A lot of relief too. And when I think about it, and I get teary because this is how beautiful life can be. When people come together with caring, with consideration for each other, and with an intention to create or do something life-serving for other people.
Something bigger than themselves.
Yeah. And in this case, it was for the children of today and hopefully decades to come.
Yeah.
So
Wonderful story.
And when I look back at my 29 years now of being with the Community Nature Center and then the Highlands Center, I have to say that was the most rewarding week of my time.
Great story.
So,
Joan, you've been a docent for a long time, wearing your wonderful vest here today with us. And I'm sure you've had many programmatic, wonderful moments of teaching and working with children. Can you share one of those special, what we like to call mission moments with us that comes to mind for you?
Well, I'd love to. Actually, it happened one Saturday during our Discovery Saturday program. And I had set up my beetle cart in the Discovery Gardens, and a mother with a sobbing child came out of the restroom. And she came up and asked me, she said, my daughter is terrified of insects. Do you have another bathroom? Well, I sent her inside, and then she eventually came out and came over to me, and she confessed that her daughter's fear probably came from herself and had been passed on. And so I invited her to come over to the beetle station. And I had a live specimen. I think it was a little rhino beetle. And totally harmless. And I took the little beetle out and let it walk from hand to hand. And she watched. I think she was with her older daughter. The younger one was still pretty traumatized. So I asked the whole group of children that had gathered if anyone else was brave enough, if anyone was brave enough to hold the beetle. And all the big kids were like backed away. But one little girl stuck her hand out. And I put the little beetle on, and the little beetle started crawling up her arm. She was totally cool. She was calm, she was still, she was just enjoying it. And the mother, of course, was watching all this. And I was hoping might be inspired and encouraged. So then after the little child was finished, I asked the mom if she'd like to try. And very slowly, she put her hand out. And the little beetle started crawling, and it kind of tickles a little bit. You know there's something on your hand.
Yeah.
And
pointy legs.
She did it. She did it. As she allowed that beetle to crawl on her, I realized that was a magic moment. Something important was happening. Her fear was starting to transform into trust and confidence. She was working through that lifelong fear she'd had. And to me, that is such a magical moment.
Yeah.
And bravo for her. She was so proud of herself. She went off to tell the rest of her family. And I'm so glad that those of us at the Highlands Center who are docents have this opportunity to help people not only learn about the natural world, but also work through some pretty big stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
They're fears.
Some past fears.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've
Yeah.
been implanted in their heads for a long time.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah. I hope that her children now and grandchildren won't have that fear.
Yeah. And
God knows we need the insects.
and making that connection to the natural world and having that positive connection with the natural world helps people get over those fears.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I'm sure you've provided many opportunities for that to happen in your years of docenting, whether it's with a school field trip or at Discovery Saturdays or family programs that we do here. And that's what we're about. And you make that happen.
And I know how it feels because I once had a phobia of snakes. I couldn't look at a book with a snake picture.
Yeah.
So I know what it's like to have a fear. And I also know that it can be worked through.
And through education and experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, which we do here. So tell me, Joan, as you think about what's ahead for the Highlands Center and the future of the center, what comes to mind for you? What would you like to see the center do and become?
Well, Dave, I'm really concerned about wildfires in the West, especially in the Ponderosa Forest.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that...
Which we are surrounded by the way.
And I love this site. I mean, I dearly love being in the forest. And I also realize that we can't take it for granted. Mm-hmm. And so I think my hope for the future, one of my hopes for the future of the center would be that we can have a satellite site that's not in the Ponderosas. Mm-hmm. And that would continue this one forever, but also have a second one.
With a little different ecosystem as well to interpret as well and to expose people to.
Yeah.
And well, maybe we can work on that together to make that happen down the line. So, so thank you so much for all you have given of your time and your talent and all the many years of nurturing this organization, because we wouldn't be the special place that we are today without you and other folks like you. So,
Dave, I wouldn't be the person I am without this special place. And that is truly the truth.
It's a mutually beneficial relationship.
It is.
And nature is full of
parasites.
nature are full of those kind of moments and relationships. So thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us today. And we will continue these special moments with founders and other key people who've made the Highlands Center what it is today. And if you want to learn more about what's going on right now at the Highlands Center, just go to our website at highlandscenter.org for lots of different programs coming up this summer and fall.